All right. Just doing a quick check on the microphone. This keeps messing me up every time. Uh, hello. Okay, sounds like mic might be working. Please let me know if there's any issues with the sound. Don't have me talk for 30 minutes without anything happening. So today we're going to be talking about overtraining. I'm not going to do much of an intro to this one because it's a lot of information. It's a lot of stuff. I don't want to run out of time. I'm going to try and keep this as much as possible to 30 minutes. So this was done from a request based on, how can you tell if you are overtraining and how much should you be pulling back and stuff like that. And I find it really interesting when I get asked this question. A lot of the time it's how can I tell if I'm overtraining. And pretty much that always gets asked by people who already know that they are definitely overtraining. But the bigger problem is they don't have the answers on the other side of why are they overtraining? Why is what they're doing not working? So I'll do my best to spend a little bit of time on things, you can check and assess. But the more important thing is figuring out, why does overtraining happening? What is it about you physically, psychologically? Is it that you can't adapt to things quickly enough, or is it that your brain is just trying to force you down a road that it shouldn't be going down, for better or for worse? The other thing that was interesting to know as well, ahead of this, I put a poll up on Instagram, which was, how much do you train? Do you train too much? Do you train not enough? And do you train exactly the right amount? Now, if you know humans, zero people chose exactly the right amount. That's not surprising. That's just kind of the way it is. Only two people thought that they were training too much. And everybody else was not enough. And it was a big difference. I can't remember the exact number, but it was tens or 20s of people who were saying they don't train enough. And good news for me, I get to see the actual people who replied and kind of went through, and I'm like, hang on a minute. A lot of you guys are really, really successful in the things that you do, and not like just work, physical stuff. Like you train to a high level, or even some who, maybe they got like a regular career job, but they train all the time. I can see it on their Instagram posts. They're always out doing work, going to the gym and stuff. So it's very interesting to know that part of like either the human condition or part of just anyone dumb enough to follow me on Instagram, those kinds of people are always thinking they're not doing enough, regardless of whether the actual evidence tells them that, maybe you're fine. And, is not doing the stuff, say that again, is not doing enough the same as could be doing more? Because it's probably possible for everybody to be doing more, but that doesn't mean that you all should be doing more. So that was interesting. Um, and then some people who responded that they weren't training enough, again, just from having met these individuals, I already know for a fact that they're training far too much. They're doing way too much. So then again, what is it about that makes people think they're not doing enough work? Uh, is it because they're not seeing the results that they think they should be seeing? Is it because, again, they just think they could be doing more? Is it because what other people are saying, or what other people are projecting onto them? Very interesting to think about, and that's kind of where we're going to be going with this. But first of all, let's just talk about overtraining in the first place. So, what are the kind of signs that you can see if you are training too much? And I'm going to break these down into like categories. So, I'm going to start with the actual physical body. And the first thing that I'm going to mention is, when I'm talking about the physical body, I'm not going to be mentioning pain. Okay. So, pain isn't a sensation that, automatically happens. Pain is something your brain decides to give you based on the information that comes in. And it's important to know that when we're thinking about overtraining, because you can be feeling pain and be completely fine because maybe you've had injuries before and your brain's just a little bit panicked. Or you can be feeling pain that's not the right degree of what you should be feeling. So you might have taught yourself to ignore pain signals because you're constantly pushing through. And so now you're not really feeling the pain anymore, but maybe your body's giving you all these physical signs that actually you should be doing a little bit less. So number one, let's talk about what kind of signs your body is going to give you. And when it comes to the body, the biggest things is just going to be evidence of tissue damage. Okay. So, if you're a trapeze artist or something like that, where you're grabbing onto stuff all the time, if you're getting physical tears and rips in your hands and you're never letting those heal. Okay. So calluses are one thing. The skin's going to toughen up. You give it time to repair, it toughens up. If they're constantly getting ripped and you're not giving yourself a chance to heal that ever, that is a sign of overtraining. That's where we're going to start with, just so that everybody knows you can still move around and function even if your hands are all ripped up. But if your body's getting tissue damage and your brain thinks, hey, you're never dealing with this, you're never letting me recover, then what you're going to see down the line is that the bigger symptoms of overtraining, like your lack of enthusiasm, motivation, mental health disorders, stuff like depression and fatigue, they can come even though you had some tissue damage that you didn't think was a big deal. And usually, if you're training so much that your hands are tearing and you're never stopping, you're probably going to have other stuff going on too. But looking for signs of tissue damage, and at some point, it might not be every day you have to let these things fix themselves and sort themselves out. But if you're never doing it, then the problem's going to go deeper and deeper. And as it goes deeper, the brain is going to start trying to physically shut you down. Then the second big one, because like I said, pain isn't a good indicator of tissue damage. It might contribute. You go, oh, I'm sore here. That could be because something's actually physically damaged. It could be because the brain thinks it might be about to be damaged. Who knows? But if you get like bruises, so any kind of bruises, any different colors, every red marks, all of those kinds of things, any type of actual visible difference is going to be a sign that the body has sustained some amount of physical issues, physical damage, whatever, that is going to need some time to rest and recover. And if you're never letting yourself do that, then very good chance, well, actually 100% chance you are overtraining. You need to give those physical things a chance to kind of fix themselves and heal themselves. Then once we get from the body itself, that's pretty much all we're going to be able to look for, is like the visible stuff from the body. Everything else is going to involve the brain, what the brain thinks you are doing and the brain's response to the stuff that you are doing. So the next things that you want to look for, number one, is weakness. Okay. A lot of the time when you're experiencing like muscle weakness, so your left side has just suddenly got super weak, there are psychological reasons that can happen, but very often if the response is from overtraining, it's because the nerves in your arm are just getting like lengthened, slacked, and they're just getting too much strain put on them. And over time, what that shows up as is the nerve is just going to weaken the signal that goes up and down. And so you're going to have like muscle weakness in the body. And again, if you've got muscle weakness that you never give time to come back, then that is also going to be classed as overtraining. You're doing it too much. Again, this needs maybe just a few days, but have the test be like, this is a bit weak today. So either left arm is weak, I'm going to do just right arm stuff. I'm going to train everything else, but I'm actually going to give that a chance to rest. Or maybe I'll have a whole day of total rest and see if it gets a bit better. Then I might start gradually, then going to just my right arm, then going to whole body stuff without involving the left arm. And if it still seems like it's getting better, then I can start incorporating everything back in. So again, nice, easy example. Stuff gets weak, just leave it a little bit of time, and usually it's gonna come back. You can tell after a few days if this is starting to get better, then that was from the training that you're doing, and you can just take it easy and integrate it back in nice and slowly. After this, the next big one is going to be something that physically changes the way that you move in a negative way. And the big one for this is going to be how you walk. Okay, you walk more than you do any other type of training. All throughout your day, you're taking more and more steps than pull-ups or skin the cats or juggling cascades. Whatever training that you're doing, you're always doing more walking steps than that. And if you find that the type of training that you do makes you walk funny, then that is a sign that this needs more rest and recovery. Either you need to drop down the intensity of what you're training, so you just don't train as hard for so long, for example, and then you might find that it doesn't ever change the way you walk. You can be super physically tired after it, and maybe you've got a little bit of DOMS the next day, but you still feel like, oh, when I need to get up and go and do stuff, I'm walking around like I normally walk around. That's a pretty good sign. If your walk is starting to change and you're noticing that is sustained through time, again, very big sign that you are training far, far too much. And when it gets to the level that it's going to start affecting how you walk, that's going to put a ton of stress through your joints, so that even if you do this for a long time and now the way that you walk differently starts to become a habit, then even if you stop training, you might find that you're still walking funny, and that funny walk is putting too much stress through your knee or through your hip or shoulder or something like that. And then that means the injury never gets a chance to heal, because you're still now walking with this altered gait pattern. That means when you go back to training, actually your shoulder hasn't had a rest. It's still been doing that weird arm swing or something like that, or your knees still been rolling in every single time you walk, and the whole thing has been stretched, and so it's stiffened up and tightened up. So anything that makes you walk funny, not funny, but anything that makes you walk different from how you normally walk is going to be a big red flag. For me, that's the biggest indicator that it's not just train something else or slow down your training. That's like, chill out, take a few days off, see what happens then. Can you actually feel everything coming back to normal with how you walk? And then the final kind of section, which is super huge. All of these we can break down a lot further, by the way. I just want to go through them as quickly as I possibly can. Anything that is causing you negative psychological effects, either during the session, after the session, or before going into the next session. So doing the same thing every single day should not be a negative experience. Okay, everybody's done like a hit session where you're working really, really hard, and by the end of it, you're totally dead. Okay, you probably are walking funny. You're probably not even breathing well. But for some reason, it feels kind of good. You're like, oh yeah, that was nice. And you go to bed. You don't do that same hit session the next day. You give it a chance to rest. You might even still be going and training, but it's just much lighter work. And then the next day you wake up and you're like, oh yeah, actually I feel so much better for doing that workout. That is what that should feel like when you're doing that kind of intense workout. It doesn't have to be pleasant at the time. Part of what you're training is your endurance to negative psychological events. But if you're doing that session and it feels horrible throughout, and then after the next day, you're not getting all those endorphins. You're just getting, that sucked. I hate moving around. And even worse is then when you know you have to train tomorrow and you're just dreading it, because the only thing, you've basically given such a negative impression to your brain that the only thing that it can think is how much this is going to hurt tomorrow. That is when we start hitting like the third barrier of overtraining, which is the psychological bit. That's the most negative, that's the most damaging. Once you start to build this into a habit that actually training sucks, it's not supposed to be good, it's not supposed to be fun, and you're just doing it because you feel like you have to or you need to. We're going to get to that in a little minute. That's where things are going to start to spiral negatively, because all the psychological effects in your brain are then going to start affecting your body. So, like I said, pain is not a physical thing that you feel. Pain is something that, based on the stuff that you feel and based on everything that your brain is assessing, pain is then the response. So, you can stick a needle into my arm when I'm expecting it and I'm watching you do it and I'm feeling nice and calm, and I know that it's going to be a fun experiment or a joke, or I'm getting a tattoo, whatever the reason is, and it can hurt like hell. It can be really physically painful. My brain's like, this is destroying your shoulder, but I could be enjoying it and I'm in good company, and we're just watching it happen. It's like, yeah, man, this really hurts. Um, it's unpleasant. You could be saying, I don't like it, and I'm smiling. Um, that pain is not the same as if somebody just randomly in the street takes the same tattoo needle and just jams it into my arm. The unexpectedness of it, the environment, the sense of immediate danger, all of those things is going to make the pain seem much worse. And your brain really does change the intensity of the kinds of pains and the kinds of emotions that you feel based on everything surrounding you. So if you're in a generally positive environment, you're going to feel much better. If you're in a generally negative environment, you're going to feel much worse. If you're constantly overtraining to the point where you just consciously feel like life is just not that good, you're not getting the results that you want, you're not getting the improvement that you think you should be getting from the kind of training that you do. If you're doing something like a circus course, like a degree course or some other, year to 3 year long training, you might be seeing the deadline and going like, oh man, this is coming up, and everything's slowed down. Or you're just feeling tired all the time. You're just feeling constant like aches and pains, and that's the main thing that you're thinking about all day, is just, I feel so slow and lethargic. Um, all of those things are where this has become kind of a much more serious problem. And what people are going to tell you to do is, well, you just need to rest. And actually, once it's got to this point, this is where your whole mindset around training is going to start to change. So even if you rest, your brain is still going to remember when you go back. Is like, I remember this. This is that thing that I hate. And it's going to try to protect you from going back into training by giving you all of those negative symptoms again. So it's not necessarily at that point just a case of rest it out. Once you've hit that wall where you're doing too much for too long and nothing seems to be working anymore, that's when we need to think about the bigger picture. And this is where it starts to become important to know, why are you overtraining in the first place? Okay. Everybody knows that rest is important. So, when you physically damage your body, you need to give your body a chance to recover. The body recovers, and then you go increase the load a little bit, and that's how you build exposure and tolerance to the thing that you're doing. And the big reason that I imagine most people give to why they are training too much is, I want to be better. So I'm not good enough as I currently am. I need my skills to be better. And if that were true, if that was the only reason that you are overtraining, then all you would need to do is know how rest can help, and you would just do it. Because if your actual only goal is just, I need to be better, I know rest helps, then why aren't you resting? That's pretty much the whole thing sorted in a bag. Is like, oh, cool, yeah, I'll do my training session, I'll have a day of rest, and then I'll do another training session the next day, and I'll listen to my body and all of those little signs that James just gave about overtraining at the start. I'm seeing physical damage. I'm starting to see like actual weakness. I'm not as strong on day 2, so maybe I need an extra day so that when I come back, I'm back to my same level of strength, or at least similar. If you're doing a 12-week cycle of training, then you might find you're getting a little bit more tired, but it shouldn't be a huge drop. So you could just take all those markers, and that's what you go with. Is when you start seeing the signs of tissue damage, changes to your body, changes to your mind, then you go, cool, I take a slightly longer break, have another week off, whatever, then you're good. Unfortunately, that is almost never the case. So when somebody's training too much, I don't think I've ever been in the situation where that has been enough to sort the problem out. So I want to spend the last 10 minutes. We'll talk about a couple of different solutions at the end, but I want to spend the last little while talking about a few different scenarios of why overtraining might happen. The first one is everything that I just said is true. You're training too much because you want to be better, and it's not true that you would just do the rest. The problem is your training is garbage. You are training in the wrong way. Maybe you just used to train one type of way and you saw yourself get better. So like in the initial stages of learning a circus skill, doing more is probably better. Like the more you're juggling, the more you're doing trapeze for, even a couple of years, just doing more of it is going to make you better, because you're not good enough to physically do the same thing in the same way over and over. Every single time you do it, you're going to be making about 10 different mistakes, which means you're not putting a huge amount of stress on the exact same part of the body. You're sharing all of the load all around you. So you can try to do that backward somersault and you get different muscles engaged every single time, which actually might be a really good way to make you a very resilient and strong individual. But if you take that and now you've built up your stamina and endurance and physical strength, and now you're just doing backward somersaults over and over and over again. Now, every time you're doing that somersault, you're engaging the same muscle group, you're landing on the same joints. The stress through the exact same chain is going up. You might have learned to use the muscles more efficiently, but because you never share the load by doing other things, and backwards somersaults is like a really narrow assumption. It could be acrobatics in general, and you're just doing similar types of acrobatic tricks all in a row every day, or you like to work on one skill at a time, so you're always drilling that thing. Whatever it is, you're just doing the same as what you did before, but actually you've got better now, so your training has to get better. You're going to hit more different pitfalls. Usually in that situation, having a coach is going to be the best thing to do. Writing down what you're doing, writing down what you don't think is working is going to be helpful. Having someone else watch you and go like, look, this is what I see is almost always going to be the best option. The only thing to be wary of is bear in mind that this is not like just a you thing. This is circus performers in general. A lot of sports in general, but circus in particular, I see incredibly high amounts of people overtraining all of the time. So the person that you get watching you might also have that same problem, same issue of, more is better. So it might be good to have a discussion about, what they're seeing you do, what they think you could be doing better, but having a second set of eyes just to watch you train and think, what could that look like? How could you incorporate different kinds of movement so that the load is shared across more of the body could be really useful. And if you can't get another person, think about that yourself. Are you just doing the same discipline over and over again? Usually that means the same muscle groups are going to get worked too hard. Or are you always just working on the most difficult tricks, in which case the intensity is probably too high? And if that's the case, then is there a way that you can be training better? So could you, instead of training for 3 hours every day, spend 10 minutes of that 3 hours at the end of the day figuring out how you're going to make tomorrow's session more efficient? So you did that same drop 40 times because you can't quite get it. Well, spend 10 minutes at the end of your session and just figure out, well, what am I doing wrong that it takes me 40 goes of no change? How could I make that 20 goes and still get still get some kind of change? Is it that the skill's too difficult and I should be working on something easier? Is it that I'm just not thinking about it? I think I need to do 40 repetitions. So you finish the drop, you get right back up, and you finish the drop and you get right back up. And you don't think about, well, what did I feel that time? What went wrong? Are you filming yourself? Are you watching how it goes? There's loads of different ways that you can probably be making your training more efficient, so it can take either less time or just less time doing the really high intensity, difficult stuff, which is usually where all the overtraining comes from. Second thing that is potentially going to be an issue, I'll use an analogy from the world of football. When a goalkeeper is in a big footballing event like the World Cup, and it goes to the end of the game, it's a draw, and so to decide the match, they have to take penalties. If you're not a football fan, penalties, it's just one player against the keeper. They get to kick the ball. It happens so fast that the goalkeeper has to, before the ball is even kicked, he has to decide, I'm either going to jump to the right, I'm going to jump to the left, or I'm going to stay in the middle. He has to make that call. Statistics show that if the goalkeeper just stays in the middle and doesn't move, he's going to save it more times. He saves the goal, stops the goal going in more times than if he jumps to the left or right. And that's just because if the footballer kicks the ball to the left or to the right, there's more chance that it'll actually go too far wide. But what actually happens is the goalkeeper almost never stays still in the middle. And why is that? For the goalkeeper's psyche, when his whole country is watching him, if he doesn't save the goal and he didn't move, subconsciously or even consciously, that feels like he actively let the whole country down. If he jumps one way and it was the wrong way and the goal goes in, then his conscience feels like, well, at least I did something. Whereas if it looks like he just stood there doing nothing and the ball goes in, then that's a lot harder on yourself, because you might even start to believe that yourself, is like, you decided to stay there because you thought, statistically that's the best thing to do, but when it didn't work, it's like, oh well, did I do that, or did I just freeze and panic, and all of the negative self-talk that you can give yourself, and everybody that was watching you saw, oh man, he didn't even want it, he didn't go for it. This, in my experience, has been the much bigger thing that affects people's training. So are you overtraining? Are you doing too much training because you really think it's better to do too much training? If you're at the point where you're already asking me, am I overtraining? You've already figured it out. You know you're training too much. You're maybe not sure how to fix it. But one of the reasons that, like, you could fix it by trying and testing out how much rest you're getting, how much of this you're getting. But instead, what you do is you go, I just need to be doing more. And a lot of that comes down to, and you might not be consciously thinking this, but the chances of you becoming the greatest in the world at something are super low. So when everybody else is watching you and you're training all day, the feeling in your head, whether it's true or not, is like, these people don't think I can do it. I need to prove it to myself, and I need to prove it to them that I can do it. And if I don't do it and they just saw me sitting doing nothing, then what they're going to be saying about me is I didn't do anything. And for a lot of people, it's that feeling of like what other people are going to think about them, especially if you're in a circus school. You're like, oh man, they all say how important it is to work hard, but nobody's ever said what the maximum amount of work is. So I just need to be working harder and harder and harder all the time. But it could also be yourself. It's like, I think I need to be working harder because I don't know how else to do it. So I don't, every time I see myself sitting and doing nothing, that counts as like a big red mark against my name. Whereas if I'm doing something, even if it's the wrong thing, then that's better. So a lot of the time, the psychological impact of how you feel about yourself versus how you feel about the other people in the world is that it's better to be doing something badly that's affecting you negatively than it is to be doing nothing at all that might be affecting you positively. Um, if that's the case, this video might be. But first of all, consider that that might be the case, because it's very rare that I've seen issues of overtraining where it just got resolved straight away, where it was like, oh yeah, cool, I just need to do a little bit less. Um, so consider that even if you don't think this is the case, at some level there is something that is making you feel like you need to do the wrong thing because it looks a bit more right in either your eyes or in somebody else's eyes. If this is the case, the first thing is just to be asking yourself why. I would personally recommend, going to work with somebody else about this. So in a lot of instances, actual full-on talking therapy can be really helpful, because a lot of your behavioral traits are going to be influenced by everything that's happened to you throughout your past. And so going to an actual psychotherapist, or even just counseling, something like that, you might be able to unpick, like, oh yeah, maybe it's just because I didn't feel like enough people believed in me, or I because of this and this, I get the feeling that everybody thinks I'm just a bit weird and doing something stupid, and so that makes me need to visibly be seen. Whatever it is, you can get a lot of information from there. You could also, if you don't like the idea of like going deep dive into your full emotions and stuff, you could work with somebody like me, where we don't necessarily go into the past too much. We just go into the future and we start figuring out, well, what is it you're actually trying to achieve, and can we actually logically unpick a way that you could be achieving this better? So, what kinds of things can you be doing where you would actually see the improvement, and then you would know that rest was a good idea, because that's most of the time is the overtraining comes from, well, I haven't seen any proof that doing it the other way is good for me. So that's where we go. um we've gone over the time already, so I'll just do a very short bit on, a couple of tips, a couple of things that you can try. Number one is, well, this would be pretty much the only thing that I'll have time to talk about today. Start collecting more data on your training. Okay. So, for like logically sorting out overtraining, a big part of it is you just don't know what you're doing. You're just going in and you're doing what you think looks like a good training session. And then you're coming out and then it's like, well, how long do I have to do that for? The rest of my life? Okay, fun. Um, Have you ever set goals for your individual training session? Have you ever gone, by the end of this session, I want to be able to do a backflip. I want to land a backflip from my feet to my feet with no mats on the ground. Write that down and see by the end of the session if you were able to do it. And if you weren't able to do it, then that means the prediction centers in your brain, the bits of your brain that are predicting, are not accurate. Or if you were able to suddenly do a full twisting backflip by the end, still the prediction centers are not accurate in your brain. You don't have a good idea of what you can get out of one session. So how are you ever going to predict what you can accomplish in 3 years if you can't accomplish what you can get out of one session? You could even go even smaller, of like, I'm about to try the backflip. This is how I think it's going to go based on my knowledge of everything I've done before. And just first of all, just start predicting what you're actually capable of, because prediction is a really weird thing in that it's very hard to get it accurate. And if you aren't good at predicting, um, what you can accomplish from your training, is very likely you're going to think that you can accomplish way more. And so when you don't achieve it, the answer is that you just didn't do enough because you could have done more. If you start actually making those accurate predictions, that can go a long way to sorting the problem out. Second thing is to test rest. So again, collect data. How easy was your training session, especially with stuff like flexibility and conditioning, where most people tend to just do the same thing over and over again? Put it 2 days apart and give yourself like a rate of perceived exertion. It was a 9 out of 10 in difficulty on Monday, and on Wednesday it was a 11 out of 10. So maybe your rest days need to be further apart. Um, Ideally, you should be hitting like the same number or similar to the same number every single time that you're doing those hard conditioning sets. Same for your skill training. You know, if you're doing trapeze on a Monday and then a Wednesday, and on Wednesday it's killing you, then something's wrong. Either you need trapeze sessions further apart, or you need your trapeze sessions to be easier. They just need overall difficulty level need to drop. And then the final thing that I will leave you with is consider the idea that what you're doing can be fun. We don't have time to look into, analyzing why you feel the need to be pushing way too hard and stuff. Like I said, send me a message if you want to go into that. At the moment, I offer a free consultation for anyone, whether you're looking to work with me or somebody else. I can help point you in the right directions. But, sorting that kind of thing out, finding out, exactly what you want out of your training, exactly what's causing you to be driven in a certain way is really useful. But even if you didn't know that, why did you get into circus in the first place? Did you go in, have a shitty first day, and go, man, yeah, this was amazing. I hurt everywhere. I'm sad. The coaches and teachers were really mean to me, said I wasn't doing enough. I want to go back tomorrow. Probably not. You did it because it was fun, and then it got so fun that you wanted to do it for the rest of your life. And then because you wanted to do it for the rest of your life, you now felt like it matters and you have something to prove. The people who get to like the top levels of sport, there can be a range of like, people who enjoy it more than others. All of them enjoy something that they're getting from it. So some of them have no problem going out and doing the work because they enjoy the money that they're getting, or some of them enjoy. I had one guy who said, "I don't even care about archery anymore. I just care about competitions. I love going in and being able to figure other people out. And archery is the skill I have that's really good, that I'm really good at, that I can go in and get to do this with. So that's why I choose archery." I thought that was interesting because it just shows it could be circus that you really love. And so, actually, why isn't your circus training fun anymore? Nobody's going to want to see you do the skill that almost ruined your life. They want to see you show the things that bring you joy. Um, for my own experience, I got burned out of kind of gymnastics and acrobatics training, and it was specific when I kind of did all the work I'm talking about, going through and figuring it out, is because yeah, I genuinely thought that because my skill level was much lower than everybody else I was around at the time, that was the most important thing. I needed to get my skill level up higher than everybody else's, so I had to work harder than everybody else. Um, and so it wasn't even like I thought I should be doing more. I was just watching how many days is that person training. 5, okay, I'm going to do 6. How many hours for? How many reps do they do? If they do 10 reps, I'm going to do 12 reps. And over time it just wasn't satisfying, because obviously I'm never going to overtake when I'm physically harming myself like that. One of the things that got me back into training was once stuff like Instagram came out. I just really enjoyed making silly videos that was like, let's just think of a trick that might look funny on camera. I'll try it. And then I realized I couldn't do it because I hadn't trained for so long, and I would then have to go and train over and over again to train the cartwheel or the backflip or whatever to make sure it would work, and then go for the trick. And that made it fun for me. So just have a think of like, how would you make training fun if you could be guaranteed that this is the skill level that you're going to have for the rest of your life, you're never going to make it any better? Would you still be doing circus? If so, why? And what would you do in your training session? You can't get a more difficult skill. How are you going to make it more fun? Would you just be making routines all day? Would it be different costumes. Just make it spin more. You just really love spinning, so every day would just become spin, 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 spin. Walk out really dizzy. Come back the next day and do it again. Ask yourself those kinds of questions. What would it look like if I still enjoyed this? That's probably where you're going to find this stuff on your own. So I'm going to leave that there. Hopefully, I've covered a bit of everything. I didn't get any questions today. So if you do have any questions, send me a message. You can find me on Instagram at Circus Trainer. Like I said, I can give you a free consultation to, figure out what's going on, and if you want to figure things out on your own, what kind of steps you should take. If you want to work with somebody, we can discuss. Maybe I'm the best person. Maybe there's somebody else. But yeah, don't let yourself stay stuck in the overtraining rut. If you're already on that kind of psychological path of destruction, just know it's super common. Like I said, that study, a lot of people told me they thought they weren't training enough, and I know for a fact they're training way too much. It happens way more than you actually think. So it also, people get out of it way more than you actually think as well. So I will leave you on that. Thank you for bearing with me till the end, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.